All right, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, and tonight we're going to be talking about Netflix's new original series based on the Vertigo comic from DC and created by Jeff Lemire, Sweet Tooth Season 1. We're going to be talking about that right now. And so if you're new to the channel, welcome to the channel. If you're a returning visitor, welcome back. How's everybody doing today? So we're only at count that I had. We're only at 45 subscribers till 2,000. So let's see if we can get there. If you're not a subscriber, please become a subscriber to the channel. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications, and don't forget to hit the share button, all that stuff. Blah, 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 blah. Let's talk about Sweet Tooth. So I'm a big comic book guy. I'm sitting here. I got my omnibuses sitting here. I've got old ass Fantastic Four sitting on my desk. But I've never read Sweet Tooth. And I don't know why. I actually looked into picking up the books and realized that I didn't want to have any baggage going into this show. I was like, you know what? I'll read it afterwards. And that's one of the key things to why this show works for me. And that's the lack of baggage I have for the cast. Now, this is a good show. All right, we're not going to get into spoilers yet, but, you know, we're going to always do what I do. We're going to talk about the cast and things like that. This was a really, really good series so far. We're only on season 1. I don't know how many seasons. I would imagine this show should probably only go maybe 3, 4 seasons tops. I just don't see so far how far I can go. I don't know how long the book was. But right off the bat, one of the things that I love about this show is that it reminds me of something that if they could have pulled off in the 80s, this was something that I feel like was given to us as 80s kids, as me, as like an 80s kid and a kid. We got really kind of adult kid stuff, like the Goonies, things like that. These days, a lot of the kid stuff is just really sanitized and really just in-your-face stuff and not too challenging. This is like a throwback to that, but it's also mixed with such a light-hearted feel, even though there's some really dark material going on. There's a hopefulness that comes of the main character of Gus that's infectious to a fault. But it's from the main character of Gus, who is Sweet Tooth. I love with this show right from the get-go, because I've seen so many different takes on post-apocalypse and things like that, and comic book, adaptations. This really was like combining a lot of things that I really liked. It reminded me of The Last of Us, and there's all sorts of things you could take from, like, things that reminded me of Wizard of Oz, Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer. Just a lot of different influences in this show that really worked. The cinematography is fantastic. The acting is really good. The writing can be a little iffy sometimes, but I forgive it because I really am invested in the characters and what's going on in this story. So if you don't know what's going on in this story, right, there's this virus that basically, you get this like crazy finger twitch, this little pinky twitch, and it's one of the most deadly viruses known to man, wipes out a whole lot of people, and at the same time people are dying, women are giving birth to animal-human hybrid babies. And people start believing that because one is so close to the other, that the hybrids must have caused this, because that's how people think. or lack of thinking. Everybody's got to make a villain out of things, right? So they blame the babies that are these little they had to have caused this, and so they're hunted down and dissected to try to make a cure for this illness because they're immune to it. So they must be the cause. Now you have Will Forte, who plays Pubba, aka Richard Fox, who at the beginning of this takes this baby named Gus out to the woods and they live away from everybody else. So while the rest of the world is dying and going crazy over this virus and hunting down the hybrids, he's in the woods raising his son and teaching him to stay away from people, and because they'll kill him. And I gotta say right off the bat, Will Forte, this might be I like Will Forte in a lot of things. I've not liked him in everything, but this is probably the most normal part he's ever taken without being goofy in some way. This is the most straight character I've ever seen him play, where there's no jokey, goofy, oddballishness. He's just a guy. And I really, really liked it. I really, really liked it. This might be my favorite performance of his, next to Last Man on Earth. And that's the thing, is Will Forte's not like this great big star. I mean, he's a pretty well-known comedian and actor, but he's not like, they didn't get an A-lister to do this. They got somebody to play off type to me, and that's somebody that just you'd think of for something like this. And that's one of the other strengths of this show, is that the cast doesn't bring a lot of baggage with it. I don't know most of these people from very much. Like Nanzo Enozi here, right? I know he was in that horrible Artemis movie that I didn't watch. I know him as Zaros Andaxis, if I'm saying his name right, from Game of Thrones. And I've liked him, but I don't have like a bunch of preconceptions like if you got an A-list star to be in this. You also have our main character played by Christian Convery. Don't really know anything about him, but he is incredible as Sweet Tooth. Now there's some writing for the character that's not the actor's fault, but this kid really brings just such a hopeful, the way that they got this kid to act, so hopeful, so earnest, so naive, so trusting, he's how you want your kids to be. That you want them to always have that hopefulness and that wide-eyed wonder that most people, once your kids start to get a certain age, and start seeing the world for what it really is, a lot of them lose that kind of wonder. And Gus, being away from other people, hasn't never lost it. And through 95% of this series, he's got this just great outlook, even in the worst of circumstances. Sometimes, again, to a fault. Where as an audience member, for me at least, I would sometimes I couldn't help but be cynical and be like, I'd kind of roll my eyes a little bit. But I would kind of have to come to and go, no, this is good that he's like this. Even because I think as people, we want to sometimes throw a glass of cold water in somebody's face when they're just this, decent and good and hopeful, and we want to bring them down to our level of, no, sorry, this is the way the world really is. There are times when his character is just written a little too naive, where he's his own worst enemy in some ways because of how naive he is. He really runs full on into things without thinking about the danger. He's such an innocent that it's a little maddening at times, but most of the time it really, really works. Another character, Stephanie LaVey Owen. I only remember her from Krampus. She plays Bear. She plays a character who's part of a animal army. A bunch of kids put together, kind of like the Lost Boys in Peter Pan. I would say it was something it reminded me of, where they don't like adults and they love the hybrid and they feel like the hybrids are the thing that's going to save everything, and their mission is to help and save all hybrids. She's fantastic in this as well because we kind of have like this little group of people. Like once, and we're gonna start talking spoilers here. Once Gus leaves like the his home, it becomes like he meets Big Man here, and then he meets Bear, and it's like kind of like Dorothy going to Oz because Gus is trying to find his mother. So I mean, before we really get into this, like this gets a really good recommendation from me. The 8 episodes aren't very. It's only 8 episodes. Not all the episodes are terribly long. They actually another great thing that they did was they took the amount of time they needed to tell each story. So some of them needed 42 minutes. Some of them need 48. One was only 39 minutes. They went as long as they needed to be, and then they got out each episode. I love that. I hate it when shows are purposely extra long and jammed full of stuff you could have cut. This really is a pretty fast watch. I would say it would probably take you about 7 hours to watch all 8 episodes, maybe a little less than that. And they clip too. There's always something happening. Another great thing is the visual effects. There are ways that they do the animal stuff that's very great practical effects. There is some CGI stuff. There's one character that's all CGI. And even though it looks a little like, yeah, I know this isn't real, I don't care because it's so adorable. Um, it's all of it is done really, really well. Um, the set designs and stuff like these towns and the way that they make the world look after the fact is really really well done. Again, I get so many strong Last of Us vibes from this show. That it's preparing. It feels like it's trying to prepare me for the Last of Us series that's going to come out pretty soon. Was that from HBO? Um, One problem I kind of have is with the villain. He's not very well established. He's kind of just like the boogeyman, which can be effective. But we get a lot of character for everybody else, and he's kind of just this weird, odd person. General Abbott is the character's name, and I do think he's very interesting. They also kind of, he could be more interesting. Right now, I feel like he's just the cookie cutter. I want to control everything. If you're not human, you're awful villain. He's got a weird quirkiness that I can tell is there, but they've kind of leaning a little too hard into the I'm just evil for because I don't know the he wants to control the virus. He wants to control the cure. He wants to control who lives and who dies, but we don't find out like a lot of that stuff until like the last minute. But the thing is, once they reveal that, it's not really that much of a surprise. It's just that's the standard villain role in this kind of thing, especially because he's military. And so we've seen this guy a million times. The only thing that stands out is he's got these glasses and a weird beard and he smokes a pipe all the time. It's like, give me a little bit more of what this guy's background is. Why is he this way? What got him to be this way? We'll probably get more of that in season 2 or season 3, hopefully. We also get the Dr. Singe and his wife Ronnie. Now, when we watched this as a viewing party with some of my subscribers, this whole thing, and that was where there was a bit of contention. It felt like not a division or anything, but there was a little more like about this because the doctor's wife gets the illness, and he's been working on like fixing her, keeping her alive. He's got like this vaccine that staves off the symptoms of the virus. and she's now not contagious. But there became like this thing where she's walking around and other people start to get sick near her, and so it's like, was she really not contagious? Was she making people sick? Was she taking risks that she shouldn't have taken? And I think a lot of that is due to the world around us, with COVID still going on, and people immediately taking off their masks, whether they say that they say if you're vaccinated, if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask in some places. But there's also a lot of people who hated wearing masks and just use this CDC thing as an excuse to just whip your mask off and say, fuck you, everybody else. I don't care. I'm not getting sick. I won't get anybody sick. And I think that part of the story is a little bit too fresh. So it's a little hard to take these two characters a little bit for some, because it's a little like watching somebody ignore the COVID stuff that's happening now. So it's like when we see somebody ignoring this on a show, it's easy to be triggered by this. But otherwise, like it does have the kind of story of what would you do to save your wife. And in this case, the military wants the doctor to continue the work of another doctor, and that is to dissect hybrids, which are children. They're alive. So they're murdering children to find out all the different ways that they could look for a cure, since they don't get sick. And that's where the real dark stuff happens, because it's all under the surface. And and it's real creepy knowing that all these children have been rounded up and murdered because people think they're involved with these kids. To get really into, Dania Ramirez is also in this. Her name, she plays Amy, who runs a preserve for hybrids out of an old abandoned zoo, with her daughter, who's also a hybrid, called Piglet. She's really good in this too. I haven't seen her since Heroes season 2, and that wasn't very. That didn't really, to me, do much for her career, but she's really, really good here. I really liked her character a lot. James Brolin is the narrator, who, man, I had to really listen to catch that guy's voice, because it seemed like somebody else. Like, I did not recognize it all. And other than that, like I said, I gotta blow my nose. Nobody in here that I recognize at all, other than these people. And while they're recognizable, they don't overtake the story. There's even a cameo by Rhys Darby that blink and you'll miss that. That cameo. And it doesn't distract from the story. Even like the woman who eventually we get introduced to do in flashbacks of, Gus's mom, is played by Amy Seimetz, who, she's known for some things, but she's not like somebody who just pops out at you. You might go, I know her from somewhere. So in these 8 episodes, we have this kind of hero's journey going on. Gus's dad, and we're going to get full on into spoilers here. He dies. And they do this really effectively, because we have to get Gus off and on his journey. And again, having him come in and just be there for an episode and then die really worked. It was very Bambi, not to be jokey about it, but it was very Bambi's mom kind of thing, except Bambi's dad. And the rules of never crossing the fence, but he has to, because the last men are coming. They've been there already. These last men, again, it rings very, maybe I'm looking for things that aren't there, but with everything that's been going on in this country over the last year, it rings very militia-like, very Proud Boys like. It just I know that it's some people are gonna roll their eyes at this part, and that's fine. I'm looking at this because it's so topical that these are the guys that come and they want to blame the hybrids. They come and they take the hybrids away and they bring them to this general guy, and that's just what it feels like to me. But along the way, Gus finds this man he calls Big Man, his real name is Jeffers, Tommy Jeffers, who is an ex-football player, and he is an ex-last man. We don't find that out right away. Who realize once he sees that Gus can talk, which is a thing that apparently nobody knows hybrids can do. It makes it easy to kill them when they realize that when they don't think that they're human or part human. Um, so he kind of helps Gus along the way a little bit, always saying, I'm gonna give you, I'm gonna take you this far and everything. We meet a nice family along the way that live up in the like in a ski lodge, which was really cool. It gives Gus an actual chance to meet another kid that's not a hybrid, which also started kind of how many kids are left? Are they all being born hybrids? Are some of them hybrids? Some of them not? We've kind of come to the conclusion that it's still a little up in the air, like whether or not all kids are born this way. Um, just because there are still some kids around, it just seems to be like more and more hybrids are being born. And the explanation for that too is interesting because it kind of feels like more genetic crapshoot at this point. How it happens, and it also feels like they say that this is nature's way of balancing out, and there's a very very solid pro uh, fixing the planet vibe, very pro environment vibe from this story as well. Um, and we get some really really interesting things like the Singes neighborhood, where it's this place where it's supposed to be where they're all closed off and they all take care of each other, but really it's a big rat ship. They're all like sitting there, they've got this doctor that helps them if they need anything or get sick, but they're so willing to turn on each other quickly when one of them is even thought to be sick. They burn them alive in their house. Like if you're gonna do that, man, just at least just put them down before you burn them alive in their house. And they do this creepy thing where they all sing "Auld Lang Syne." It's like, and that theme is throughout. Like they play that song throughout, almost like it's like "Auld Lang Syne" is. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Is become like the new Star Spangled Banner. Like it's the theme song of the apocalypse. Um, um, but once we meet Bear, um, this was where I also thought I was gonna take a dive because this group of kids that like all love the hybrids and everything, they live in this like abandoned amusement park slash like laser tag arcade place, and I don't know. They're all like using like VR and like pretending to be animals and stuff, and I started to get a little cringed out at this point. Um, they have like this whole fight at the end where Bear wants to spare Jep's life because Gus wants his life spared, and they completely turn on each other like that. The two leaders, Bear and Tiger, they happen to have an actual fucking tiger, which I don't know, man. A wild, starving tiger being held by some kids. I think that thing would have whipped those kids around and just like started devouring everybody. And that's where it's like some of this stuff you kind of have to either accept or not accept because, Gus is able to calm the tiger down. I don't know why. Deer are usually the prey of the tiger, but maybe it's a nature thing. I They don't really explain it, but I think there are parts in this show where they just need you to make a logic, like, forget logic. The story needs to go somewhere, and that it bothers me at times. But again, I'm so invested that I go, "Ah, it's just a TV show. It's all fictional. There aren't really animal human baby hybrids out there yet." So just go with it, try not to like tear this apart, because otherwise I wouldn't even be reviewing this. If I could spend like this last half hour nitpicking all the things that I really had a problem with, because it's not perfect. It's not a perfect show, but it's charming as hell. It's so charming, and even and that's why when something really dark happens, it makes me go, "Oh shit, this is like there's a real big dose of reality going on here that's underneath this like really hopeful, non-cynical, non-pessimistic story." That again reminds you that the real world is a real crummy place. And there's a lot of real crummy people out there. And more often than not, you're not meeting good people along the way. You're meeting people that are just looking to take advantage of you, or looking to take what you have. Even Big Man here is not a perfect person. He's been a very bad person. Bear and her group of animal army people have murdered people. They've all done these terrible things. And the thing, one of the is that they don't have to show it all. Right? This show could be a TVMA, blood everywhere, body parts hacked up. They could show hybrids getting dissected. They could really shove the harshness of this world in your face. And instead what they lean into is the hope. And it's just such a weird breath of fresh air, because these days there's not a lot of it to go around. And when they take a risk like this and show the hope over the horror, and not do it in a way that you're supposed to ignore the horror, it's there. And now I'm gonna sneeze. Damn. It's really, really great to see that happening on a show. There's a moment in, I believe it's the second episode, called "Sorry for All the Dead People," where this like elk starts to walk in behind Gus, and the last man who sees it, I don't mean the last man like as in this, there's only one left. One of the last men who's going to attack Gus sees the elk behind Gus, but Gus does not see it, or it's a big deer spirit. I don't know what it was. I don't know. We never see anything like that again in the rest of the series. There is a deer like early on, but it's a real ass deer. So part of me is wondering, and there's some deer at the end when he's running that they kind of just show up. So is this some sort of spirit animal, or is this something that he can somehow instinctively call? But why would a last man be scared of a deer unless it was something that was even more than what he, like something else that couldn't be explained? So there's that. I almost forgot to talk about that. Let's see. Secret sauce is what they call what they get out of the hybrids. There's a crazy moment where Singe's neighbors, right? They've just killed a guy. They've got sick at a party. And there's this neighbor named Nancy. And every show seems to have a Nancy in it. She's like the Karen of the show. She's over there being nosy and kind of stumbles onto the secret of the Singes and gets kicked by their horse and dies. And instead of just saying, Nancy got kicked by our horse, they hide her body so that in the lab where anybody could actually probably stumble upon it, because it's the lab is not, like, yeah, it's locked, but they, instead of just coming clean, like, yes, she had caught them in what they were up to, but when the horse kicked her, all they'd have to do is go, look, these are the hoof prints on this lady's face or side or whatever. They would just say that she spooked our horse, it kicked her, but the story needed to go to where they wanted it to go, and they don't. They make the dumb decision, and that's a little bit in here where there are, and I've said, the leaps of logic where people just suddenly behave stupidly, or the writing suddenly gets a little stupider, so that they can get to X, Y, and Z. And I just didn't understand that. Like, come to find another way to do it. It was cool watching her get kicked by the horse. I thought it was pretty funny, but that's how your characters get caught. Is they just go, oh well, yeah, she's dead. Funny story. Not really. Um, let's see, what else do we got here? We got the Stranger Danger on a Train episode where Jep somehow just, it turns out that, like, basically everybody that Jep ever played for, everybody that was on his team was like, became last men. And one of them he meets on this train, and I guess everybody on his team is dead. And it sounds like I couldn't tell they were saying that they were all last men, but somehow he meets his friend on a train that used to be with him on his old football team. Again, I was just like, oh, come on. But again, it's, whatever. The backstory, though, the flashback, where we get the twist of all of this, where Will Forte's character and Amy Seimetz's character, Richard Fox and Birdie, also known as Gertrude, meet. And we find out, and this was really great. This was a really great, solid episode. It was like the shortest episode they did, which was, Gus grows up thinking that this is his dad, and his mom loved him, and she didn't mean to leave, and he's, gonna try to find his mom and everything. And we kind of know that he's being set up for failure. But the story behind it all and how fast everything happens is really interesting because, Richard is not a scientist. He was a janitor at the labs where they were vaccines for viruses, and how they somehow accidentally stumbled on all this bad stuff that, the term "they tampered in God's domain" comes to mind, even though I don't believe in all that part of it. I just think, we mess with things we probably shouldn't be messing with. And he works at the lab, and Birdie is the scientist, and he sees her upset one day, and they end up at the same bar. And I thought this whole scene was fabricated. I thought this whole scene was like a setup by Birdie to, like, somehow set up Richard at first. Again, it's just a little bit like the story needs to get them to do the thing, and so she just happens to go to the bar that he goes to, and they hit it off. They like the Grateful Dead. He's way smarter than she gives him credit for. He surprises her. They go back to her place. He guesses what she does. She tells him a few of the things that they do. She's been removed from the project that she was working on things. And so they really, she's kind of saying fuck it to her NDA here. And they really hit it off. And they're walking home, and they go to her place, and things are going somewhere. It's really sweet. They have chemistry. This is like just stumbling on a coworker that you end up hitting it off with. You go back to do whatever you're going to do at your, residence, consenting adults, and then the phone rings. And it's her job, is the military is there, and they're taking over everything. And again, I thought for a second, I was like, is she, because she goes, I can't get into the lab, I don't have my keys anymore, and I have to get to this thing that I have stashed which was like, oh, this is Gus. This has got to be Gus. And I don't have my keys. And I went, oh, like this is where I felt like it was coming back around. Like, oh, she knew. Like the phone call could have been, one of those, give me, call me at like, somebody could be monitoring their date for her and say, hey, when we get here, and wait a little bit, call me, say this is what's going on. I need to get this guy's keys so I can get back into the lab, so I can get my stuff. I'm sorry I used you. No harm, no foul. But that's not what this is either, even though it just so feels like that. To me, again, cynical, pessimist. Uh, try not to be. So he's got the keys. They go into the lab, and this is where we find out that she did not give birth to Gus. She made Gus. In fact, the term is for Gus is genetic unit series 1. And that in the course of looking for a vaccine, they stumbled on to making Gus, making animal-human babies that are immune to the virus. And he's like the first one, I believe. They made him in a lab. So he's like patient zero or whatever you want to call it, like where everything else became possible. During this episode, you have Gus reaching the house, setting himself up for failure, finding out that the lady who lives there is not her, but a friend of hers. He slowly but surely realizes everything that's gone on, that he has the cliche, nothing is true, my dad's not my dad, and running off into the woods and everything. So that whole thing was really great because the military's there. He has to, she asks him to take the baby because she's got to go back and burn the whole place down, because if the military gets their hands on everything, millions are going to die, which basically is saying that they're going to release it and kill a bunch of people because they don't know what they're doing. Not too far from the mark. And this is how it all happens. There is no grand love story. They weren't married. They weren't star-crossed. Well, maybe they were star-crossed lovers, but they weren't even lovers. They just had a date. They were on a date. They had one night together, and the next thing is happening is he's running off with Gus to take him away and keep him safe, and she's going to cover to destroy all the work to find them later, but she never shows up. And it's such a really interesting way to set up the history of the character and have this all built up. And while I knew that things were not going to be the way that Gus wanted, I just didn't see it happening the way it did. And I thought that was really great. Plus, they've got to bring back, Will Forte, who, again, is just so charming in this. Meanwhile, at the end here, Amy's zoo preserve is being, run down by the last men and General Abbott, who is a really, really awful guy. And again, there's something else there. There's a quirkiness there, and I wish they'd lean more into that rather than I just want enough of the virus to decide who lives and who dies. And have Dr. Singe do it, and him unable to, his wife too. That his wife, look, we all want to live, right? We all want to live for as long as we can. She's a character who's basically like, do what you got to do to get me to live. I don't care. Like, she knows what's involved in keeping her alive, and yet she's like, you got to do what you got to do to keep me alive. She never says, and I believe this is true, just let me die. If all these kids have to die for me to live, then I don't want to live. And while it's easy for me to say, it's maybe more realistic that she would be this way. She's not cold and heartless, but it just kind of comes out like, I don't think they don't portray her as cold and heartless, but it feels cold and heartless to just allow all these. Maybe she doesn't consider these hybrids human or people or, just something that deserves to exist. And the doctor going along with it. I don't want to do this, but I have to for my wife. They're gonna kill her, and it's like, I know where it's going, right? All these people are gonna start. Oh, I can't do this. I've got to. What what's happening here is wrong, and one life, my wife's life, and even my life might not be the important thing. The future of humanity is more important than our little thing that we've got going on here. And that's probably where it's headed, same as like with characters like Big Man who have had the change of heart and are going to help Gus get to where, go wherever, do whatever. We can go wherever we want and forget about, all the things that we're supposed to do. Let's do what we want to do. Let's build our own life. Bear, also being a part of that. So we, with Amy then having the zoo being taken over, she gets the hybrids out through the sewer. She stays behind. Her kids, Piglet, and all of them get caught. Even though we have this really great fireworks scene where she, blows up some stuff, they all get caught. She escapes. Amy escapes, comes back as disguised as them, as like the last men, and finds them gone. And later, when Gus finds the plane, and he calls the preserve on the radio, I was like, oh God, again, like, hey, look, I fixed it. I told them right that this is where we are, and they're coming right now. And immediately there's a gunshot. Big Man goes down, and Gus is taken because he's just inadvertently called the army in. And so Gus is taken to the lab where Dr. Singe is there, and he hears him talk, and he puts Gus to the side, and he's like, I want to talk to this one. I want to have more time with this one. Meanwhile, he is killing and dissecting other hybrids. The little chameleon boy, I was like, oh no, and they even show the freaking saw, like, and then I imagine how many of them have died this way over the past, how many, 10 years? Amy somehow finds, I guess she probably knew where the transmission was from the plane. She finds Big Man, puts him in the truck, and takes him back to her, where she's stashed in a skyscraper or an office building, where they're getting ready to take the kids back because Gus and the rest of the hybrids are in Abbott's, little prison for hybrids while they make a cure for humanity using their own secret sauce. And that's where we leave it. Except for the very end where, I mean, it's surprising and not surprising, is where Bear, she'd been working on the radio, the like sat phone, and she finally gets a signal through to somebody who's out in Alaska again, and of course it's Birdie. She is alive, and now she's in communication with Bear. So we're set up really good for next season. We are in dire straits though, but again, there's the hope at the end where Gus finds all the hybrids that, are his real family. Like not just Bear and Big Man, but his true kids that are all like him. And how they all have that great big group hug. And, some people might find that cringy, but it was really, really sweet because he's just been looking to find people that are like him. And while they're in really, 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 really hot water right now, hopefully when this picks up, it does not take Big Man and Amy long to get them out of there before too many more of them are killed. And that's it. I mean, I've talked about just about everything, even though I took a shitload of notes, man. I got pages and pages of notes on this show. Just to kind of keep myself, a little grounded because I know I can be all over the place in these kind of things. But that was Sweet Tooth Season 1. A really, really big surprise. I honestly thought I wasn't going to like it when I saw it. When I heard about it, when I saw it, when I watched the trailer, I did not know. But we took a chance in our viewing parties, and now we're talking about it, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it's so, so, so good and makes me feel good watching it, even though underneath there is the horror. Like I said, it reminds me of stuff like this is something that I'm happy that kids have, where it challenges you, makes you think about things, doesn't talk down to you, even though sometimes it does. Sometimes the writing does dumb down things for kids, but the rest of it is really, really solid. So, if you like this review, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. Otherwise, if you didn't like what we just saw, what you just saw here for the last 45 minutes, if you made it this far and you don't like it, like, but you're just like one of those really patient people who dislike things, well, you're in luck because we can give you new memories and we will do that for you right now. I will rewind this 46 minutes ago. So those of you who did like it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Those of you who didn't like this, well, those of you who liked it, look away. Those of you who didn't, look right here, and we'll give you a better memory of the last 46 minutes of your life. You just watched a cat playing piano. So I hope that helps. Bye.